Alright folks, now we can have a little bit of a closer look at this TRX 3.3 Traxxas nitro engine as it was pulled from our project truck. Now, I don't have to really tell you because I've mentioned it enough times. We got paper towel stuck on here and that was not from me. I can't imagine why that would be there because it doesn't look like any effort has been made to clean this in quite some time, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, all this crud is just coming off of here. Well, let's get into it. And as logic would dictate, when you're reassembling, the last thing you're going to put on before you drop the motor in is the starting system. So it's the first thing we're going to pull out. That's 2mm button head hexes. There's 3 of them on the back of here for the easy start system. So we're going to start with those. And my workflow is not going to change that much. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of set this stuff to the side and work it out as we go along. Okay, we got a problem with that one. This one we got. There is just so much buildup. It kind of, if you could see there, flowed its way down from whatever was accessible for cleaning up above, down below deck into this stuff that's kind of not accessible at all. And this easy start system was probably just pulled off the old 2.5 like we discussed this truck came with and grafted onto this 3.3, then they dropped it in. I'm not a particularly huge fan of the easy start system. I mean, I get its advantages. I really don't want to strip that. All right, folks, it looks like we got it. So there's those 3. Let's see here. And they go in pretty deep, don't they? Looks like that one's just about good. You know, before we go any further, I'm going to put a towel down for this stuff. There we go. Set the motor on there. We set our other crap on here. And just by looking at this, I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's so much electrical tape on this. If you look down inside, some of the prongs are actually fried. And granted, it's a discrete electrical system from this one, but we've already found electrical shorts in this car's radio system. And like I said, that's not related to this necessarily, but it is if you think about the fact that the previous owner, that's kind of par for the course for the previous owner on this, kind of slapping stuff together. You know, it all kind of reminds me of that lovely roll cage we took off a little while ago. And that's nothing against the guy. You know, everybody has their own approach, but whoever had this before, it's not the same as my approach. We'll just leave it at that. So we got the screws out of this. Let's see if we can give it a wiggle. It is on there, man. Okay. I'm going to use this little flathead. And if you can see in here, I'm seeing a gap that's kind of starting to develop there where the back plate is at. Put the flathead in there. And all I'm doing is doing like little 1/8 turns, 1/4 turns with the flathead around the outside edges of this. And the easy start is starting to come off. And the one-way bearing. Now that right there, folks, that is not indicative of what you would call proper preventative maintenance, if you know what I mean. This easy start system is probably toast, like I said. I'll pull the one-way bearing out and set it to the side. I don't know, maybe it can be repaired with some solvent or something like that. We can get it working again. Now the last thing we have to do is, as far as uninstalling the easy start system, is we got to take off this grounding wire that goes to the block. The pipe is going to be in the way of that. I believe the pipe uses a 2.5mm. So I have that right here. And I'll pull out these long screws that go on either side of the header. Oh, it's like all hands in the way of it. Sorry about that. There we go. And the pipe and header come off. We'll set those to the side. Now I'm seeing in here just an unbelievable amount of nastiness and sludge. It looks like it might just drip right out of there. You could see here on the towel, and it's all the way up inside, up against the side of the piston. But I can see the piston in there. So you know what? Let's go ahead and pull the glow plug. And there's the glow plug. there's really nothing about the way it looks that makes me think it's going to be super problematic. We'll set it to the side, test it a little bit later, because for where we're at right now, we are far away from the land where we will need to worry about ignition. We got a lot of work to do. So now we can gain access to this screw we were talking about that holds on that grounding wire. And the grounding wire is like an open-ended little connector, so it comes right off. The Easy Start system is right here in its semi-entirety, whatever was there before, right? So I'm going to take this and just put it back over with some other stuff here, get it out of the way. Now we can focus on the actual motor itself. So the first thing I'm going to do, just to minimize the chance that we're going to damage anything, well, damage anything, I guess it's pretty much, it's all up from where it's at, right, folks? But what I was going to say is I'm going to pull the carb. That's a 5.5 millimeter lock nut that's located right here. And that was one of the other positive things about removing the Easy Start, is the Easy Start's motor, where it mounts, is kind of in the way of a lot of this stuff. You can see how much sparser the whole assembly looks without the Easy Start on it. Oh, man. This stuff is really on here. So then when you get that backed out a little bit, you're going to want to try to push it in, which this one's not going anywhere. It's stuck. We'll try to rotate the carb to see if we can get anything out of it, which it is not. I'll back this out just a little bit further. Let me go get a couple of additional tools. Hang on. Okay, these tools might not be ideal, but they will work for what we're doing. What I have here is a BFS. If you know, you know. And just a channel lock to kind of hit it and see if we can get this to move a little bit. Now that that's done, I see that we've got a little protrusion out the other side. And okay, we're moving a little bit on here. If you could see that, the carb is actually moving a little bit. So we'll just keep on kind of rocking her back and forth. It's exposing the lower carb seal right there. You see that little like orange stripe. Keep on coming. There we go, folks. And we have removed the carburetor. I'll set that to the side because the carburetor is going to have to be fully rebuilt. There's no sense, like I said earlier, trying to reuse that in the condition that it's in. It doesn't make any sense. Now, if we have a look down inside here, the carburetor throat into the motor is very scored and nasty looking, just with like this sludge all over the place. This still is not moving at all. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, in order to take the head off of this, you have to take off this little guard that goes up here. So you got 5 of these bolts. They come off. Use my little screwdriver pry bar. And we get that piece off, okay? And then, predictably, there are 5 bolts that hold the heatsink onto the motor. I believe they're 2.5 millimeter, and I am right. So you're going to kind of want to do this in a star pattern when you're tightening and loosening these. I don't know if it's strictly necessary, but it seems like a pretty good practice to be in. Don't attempt this stuff with those little L-shaped goofy hex wrenches, those little L-shaped Allen wrenches that look like they came with a piece of IKEA furniture. You will hate your life if you do that to yourself. So even if you don't get something crazy expensive, get yourself some nice hex drivers that are at least workable and will work well for you. Okay, folks, here we go. The heatsink is off, all right? We have a look at the bottom of the heatsink. Nothing really looks too bad or burnt up. So we'll just set that to the side. You know, this motor might still have some potential kicking around in there. Oh, what am I seeing here? Now, if we look in here, there looks to be something that resembles, I don't know. I don't think it's metal shavings. I don't know, but there is debris inside the top of the cylinder, on the top of the piston there. I don't see any crazy scoring or anything like that so far as the sleeve is concerned, at least not yet. So let's go ahead and take the back plate off the motor and see where we're at with that, because this has to do with inspecting our main bearings. So again, this is going to be 2.5 millimeter. These are stuck good too. All right, we got her. So we got those off, and let's see if the back plate will cooperate with us. There we go. It's moving. I can't believe it. I really, really can't believe it. Same thing as with the carb. We just kind of wiggle it back and forth a little bit. Oh, and there comes out the back plate and everything with it. Now have a look at the color of that. This is absolute sludge. And of course, this little input shaft for the starter system is completely stuck in place. It doesn't move at all. The motor itself does not move at all. And look there. So that, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is what is inside this motor, sticking it and keeping it held fast. This is really, really crazy, man. I cannot believe the condition that this is in. Now I'm looking in here, a really common failure point that these 3.3 motors are going to have is they split their connecting rod, because it is a grooved connecting rod. It splits right along that groove and it goes up to the wrist pin. That's a common failure point that you'll see on these. We will be able to inspect that and see if that might be something that happened to this. But first, we got to get the motor unstuck. And to do that, I am going to use some of this stuff over here. Oh, you know what? Before we go forward, let's go ahead and pull. We're going to pull the clutch bell and pull the flywheel off of this motor, okay? And then all we're going to be left with is a little case with the rotating assembly still installed, and we'll try to get that unstuck that way, okay? So in order to do this, this is an E-clip tool. You just kind of match up the size and shape of the E-clip that you're trying to remove, and then it slides onto the E-clip. These are great little tools to have, by the way, if you're working with E-clips. It slides onto the E-clip and it pops it right off. You notice it didn't fly across the room. Take this off and, oh, you know what? There's a problem here. It looks like the bearing in here has had it. So I think that might... Okay, that did fly across the room. Luckily, we were not going to need that. The bearings in here are toast. I mean, they still rotate, but they don't feel great. This doesn't want to come off. All right, we got it. So there's your clutch bell. Set that to the side. Oh, look at that, will you? It has aluminum clutch shoes. Aluminum clutch shoes that are pretty much as roached as something ever could be. They're worn down to the nubs. So we're probably going to have to replace those anyway, even though it is cool that they were installed to begin with. So there's our clutch shoes are right there. And I don't know if you can see there, the clutch spring is like, that looks like something you'd pull out of the drain in the bathroom right there. Not looking so good. So let's see if we can't get enough clearance on this. Push up the clutch shoe. Work our little screwdriver underneath there. This gets used for a lever more than it does for a screwdriver, I think. Kind of work your way around. Keep them all basically at the same height. She's going to give me trouble now, isn't she? All right. Okay, it's coming. Wow. So we got one clutch shoe off. There we go. All right, there's the clutch. You can definitely see that the flip side of it, where it was against the flywheel, is looking a lot better than the front side, where it was rubbing on the inside of the clutch bell. Obviously, this is designed to rub on the inside of the clutch bell, but not on the facing side. So the clutch bell, when this was installed, was improperly spaced. Now right here, you can see that we have this. So we will get our big boy wrench, put him on there, and see if we can pop this loose. This motor is so stuck. There we go. I didn't even have to use a locking tool because the motor is already locked. There we go on that. That's the flywheel nut. Go ahead and set that to the side. And then we are going to want to pull the flywheel itself. And for that, we have this flywheel tool. It's going to go onto the flywheel, down into the end of the output shaft. And with this one, I just use any kind of thing I've got laying around. And off comes the flywheel, ladies and gentlemen. The flywheel collet is right here. It's a split collet, like it is on most of these designs that use one. There is just so much of this gunk and junk all over this that for the time being, I'm going to leave the flywheel collet in place. So there we have it. You see the top of the piston down into the throat of the carburetor. This is just about good for the disassembly so far as where we're at now. I want to use this. So let me kind of get this stuff off of here real quick. I want to use this and set this in here. Now you'll notice in the exhaust port, this stuff's just going to pour out if we don't do something about that. And in the bottom end, we can use a little bit of this too, just to keep everything from coming out of it. This is going to need the royal soaking treatment. Because like I said, it's in really gross shape. See if we can, oh, you know what? Let's put this in here just because of the angle that the motor got stuck at. And I'm not going to try to rotate it because with how stuck this motor really is, we could damage the main bearings by trying to move the rotating assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and put that like that. Maybe we can use the heat sink as something to kind of balance this on. It wants to tip. There we go. And then for so far as the bottom end is concerned, we got our Marvel Mystery Oil right here. And this little applicator that I'm going to be using. I always thought this looked just like ATF. That is an automatic transmission fluid, not alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. For the record, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms to me are definitely a hell of a lot cooler than automatic transmissions, but I guess that's just me. So we're going to take this. Let's pull this out really quick that we put in here. Little bit down into the throat of the carb. Oh, she's coming out. All right. Get some on the main bearing in the front. You really want to try to soak all the areas of the rotating assembly that are giving you problems. And don't worry about making a mess. You clean it up later. Okay? Now we got some in the top of the piston that is coming out of the exhaust port. And I'm going to do down inside of the rotating assembly. You got the crankshaft. You got the connecting rod. And all up underneath the piston is going to need it too. Now since I see that everything's kind of flowing out everywhere and the soaking is working, we'll put back in our little stopper and kind of go the rest of the way with it, just applying the lubricant, brake free, mystery oil as you see fit. Okay, now we've got a bunch coming out of the top end, so I'm going to try to do the same thing that we did before. Kind of roll this up, stick that in here. And, you know, hopefully, folks, that'll hold for us and get us to a spot where we're going to make some progress on this. So far as the carb is concerned, oh, you know what? The back plate, we could do the back plate while we're at it and try to kind of at least get this soaking a little bit. Get it around the seams, get it in the center, and I'll probably just do the flip side of it real quick just for good measure because I believe there's a bearing in there. So if that bearing's all hung up, it's going to give us a real hard time when we try to get it out of there. Now for the carb is all here. Just going to try to squirt some of this down into the neck of the carb, free it up a little bit if we can. And then, of course, a little bit in the lower side of the neck of the carb. And if we could squirt a little bit down into the fuel delivery, that's good, because that would help free up the jets. If we have stuff stuck in the jets, which I can almost guarantee you that we do. And like I said, we won't be reusing that carb, but it'll definitely help us with the disassembly process if the carb isn't all full of that crud that's in there. All right. Another short-term goal accomplished. You can see our motor is here, just soaking up this good Marvel Mystery Oil. We can always top it off every once in a while if we need to, and that goes for the carb also and the back plate. So that's just kind of doing its thing on the sideline. And in the meantime, we have this fuel tank here, like we talked about. It's extra disgusting, not unlike a few other things that we've got going on over here on the workbench today. So what I like to do is I just take this 91% alcohol, squeeze it in here. You get the fuel tank probably about half full or half empty, I guess, depending on your ethos in life. That's up to you. And you kind of shake it around. You'll notice right away that the solvent action that the alcohol has is breaking down those oily deposits that were from the old nitro being left in the fuel tank. And what happens is the nitro evaporates out of it, and all that's left in there is the lubricant. So that's kind of the first stage of this. Obviously, gravity works, so most of the stuff is going to go down and kind of collect in the bottom of it. So you shake that a little bit once in a while, and in a lot of ways, it's the same thing as the motor. It's just a matter of time.